deep. But I do want to go with some potential trade advice, and I'd love to hear your input on some of these guys. We just made a post today actually about some week one buy low fantasy targets. And these are guys that I think could have the potential to easily outperform their current draft price and maybe where they're sitting in the trade market. These range from guys who are going in like the third round all the way to people who could potentially even go undrafted. But I just wanted to list some of these guys out and just throw out some of my reasoning and maybe hear your thoughts on them. First off, Sony Michel. Obviously, you never know because Sean McVay said that Henderson's still going to have a good role. But I think that Sony Michel, his price is just, it's so incredibly cheap that I'd probably almost say that he's like a throw-in for a potential trade, like a little sweetener. And so I think that you could easily get him in a larger deal. And I think that he has a pretty big opportunity to win this backfield because when I look back to last year, Henderson just never really looked like he won the job. Malcolm Brown didn't really either until Cam Akers came onto the scene. And Sony Michel, although he sort of lost favor in New England, I think that there's a reason that they traded for him. Yeah, really good rookie year. There's a reason they traded for him. And also Henderson throughout his career, I think every single year he's missed at least 3 games when it came to injury. And so I think there could be some moments where Michel has a chance to shine. So that's a potential buy low target. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I think he could be a good one, especially like you mentioned, John. Like we might not. He's more of a stash guy, Like maybe he's not going to be, you're not going to be starting him maybe this week or next week, but maybe a few couple weeks from now, Henderson gets injured again or just isn't producing well, and and maybe slowly but surely Michel gets more carries and then proves that maybe he's the best back available. Because it's big and it shows the explosion they had his rookie year. I think, I mean, it's worth a shot. It depends if whether you pick him up via waiver or he's a throw-in. I mean, it's a good. It's basically like a lottery ticket. You're just kind of hoping and praying, and I wouldn't be shocked. It's one of those where, like you said, Henderson could just not have a good start. It's very realistic that Michel could get majority of the carries and be the lead back here.
Right. And I think especially if you're a little bit weaker on running backs, maybe you have a couple good starters, but you don't have solid depth. I think that he could be a good guy to target because I can't imagine that if you're trading for him that anybody's going to be asking for a high price. Next is a pair of New England Patriots, and I am always wary of the Patriots offense, but at the same time, I do think that I think a lot of people worry the Patriots offense, and so I don't think that their value is as high as it could be. And so I think that you get these guys for really cheap if you are in need. The first up is Damien Harris, and the main reason is that Cam Newton is gone, and that means that who are those red zone carries going to go to? I think Cam's red zone carries versus running backs would have been like top 5 if you included him against all running backs. And so I think that Damien Harris could absolutely put up a double-digit touchdown season this year. I think his draft position is like somewhere in like the 9th round right now. And so that's pretty much putting him as like a flex option, maybe an RB3. And so I think that, if you can get him early, Mac Jones is not a runner. And so I just think that with him there, Sony Michel is gone too. So that opens up even more potential for him to, get more workload. I know it is the New England backfield, and there's just always question marks, and I'm someone who tends to avoid them. But like I said, they ran the ball a lot last year. I'm not necessarily sold on all of their wide receiver options being massive upgrades to the point where they're going to ignore the run game. So I do think that Damien Harris could be a potential solid option just because of at least the touchdown upside that you get.
I think I had him last year. He's a solid option, definitely, especially in the 9th round. But I'm more scared just because it's New England, and Bill Belichick's philosophy is I'm gonna play the running back who is 100% healthy. If you're nicked, you're not gonna get many snaps because he knows it's a physical position. And I feel like too, I'm scared a guy like Ramondre Stevenson might be splitting time because he looked impressive, and he looks like a little bit more of a home run hitter than Damien Harris. And Damien Harris, if there's 8 yards, he's probably gonna get you 8 or 9. Definitely more of a power, old school back. But it is New England. So they don't typically trust the rookies. I know they're saying that with they're starting Mac Jones, but that's kind of a different circumstance, I feel like. So, I mean, as a flex option, especially if your running backs are kind of low, it wouldn't shock me, especially because, like we mentioned, playing Mac Jones, they're probably going to lean toward the run more. And, I mean, I didn't know about that stat about Cam, but it makes sense. basically at RB3, you're kind of being touchdown dependent anyway. So he kind of
Right.
fits the bill of RB3/flex. So
Right.
yeah, especially week 1 when it might be a defensive struggle. Yeah, I'm not sure the schedule going forward, but regardless, and they added Trent Brown back too on the line. I know they lost Joe Thuney, but I think the line will be solid enough to get some push and make some holes. So, I solid option. Yeah,
The next one, another Patriot, and this is the most risky out of all the five options. But I do think that when there is sort of a mystery when it comes to who's going to fit into where in an offense, that's when you can get them for basically nothing. And that would be Jonnu Smith right now. We saw his value last year in the Tennessee offense. He had a lot. Obviously, the questions come down to where will he fit in the pecking order in New England? How's it all going to work there? But right now, I mean, tight end is just such a empty position. There's really only a few fantasy consistent guys, and Jonnu Smith right now I think is like the 15th ranked tight end being taken, and that's just such a low price that you could trade one of your deep bench stash receivers and probably get a Jonnu Smith. And so I think that if you are one of those teams who maybe is rocking with, just some random tight end, like a Mike Gesicki is who you're starting, I think the Jonnu Smith could be worth taking a chance on just because the talent that he does have, we've seen how New England likes to use tight ends in the past. I think Mac Jones and the quick processing time could lead to more targets to his tight ends. And once again, we just don't know what the pecking order is right there. So he could very well even potentially find himself as the number one option in the offense. We just don't know right now. But what do you think about Jonnu Smith?
yeah. Especially, I believe Hunter Henry's already questionable, and even if he does play, some New England tight ends also tight end is also. I feel like New England would have a similar ideology as the running backs. We're not going to play as much if you're banged up because we know you're not going to be contributing as much. And they have like their third round pick a few years ago, Devin Asiasi, who's kind of more of a blocking tight end anyway. So I think Johnny will be more of the receiving guy, and he could easily be a favorite of Mac Jones in terms of targets. A big tight end over the middle. Um, and they paid him good money to New England. I mean, they also paid on Henry money, but they paid Johnny Smith for money. So I think they may want to just feature him a little bit more, and I think that's what they want to do. They're going back to that Gronk, Aaron Hernandez style of football. So I think I think Johnny Smith's probably more of a touchdown dependent tight end, but I would still take a gamble on him, especially if you mentioned you don't have a very good one. You're in the Gesicki-ville like I am. Well, I was in Gesicki-ville in that league, but you know what I mean. Like
Right.
you don't have many reliable options at tight end because really after Waller, Kittle, Kelsey, I would say after those three, you're really just tight end dependent on touchdown dependent in regards to tight ends.
Right. The next guy, he is the most expensive and the most highly drafted of the five that we're going to talk about, but it is Amari Cooper. And I'm actually pretty shocked at where I'm seeing his draft price going at right now. I think in all of my leagues, he's gone after CeeDee Lamb. He's typically going like the third or fourth round, and I think that indicates that his trade price is not going to be at a wide receiver one level, maybe not even at a high end wide receiver two level, just because of who the guys are going above him and how high people are on CeeDee Lamb. But I want to remind people that when Dak Prescott was healthy last year, Amari Cooper was the number 2 overall receiver in all of fantasy. And as we've talked about before, they have a bad defense, which means they are going to pass the ball a lot. And I just think that Amari Cooper, this could be the lowest value that he is at all season. I'm not going to say that he's going to be a top 5 fantasy receiver, but I could easily see him being a top 10 just because, once again, the amount of volume that he could potentially get. I do get that CeeDee Lamb is poised to have a really big year, but I don't think that threatens Amari Cooper's workload at all, in my opinion, because, once again, bad defense equals passing the ball a lot. And we've seen many offenses that can sustain multiple receivers throughout the whole year. Even last year, the Panthers offense was able to sustain 3 top 25 receivers in fantasy. And I think that the Dallas offense is better than the Panthers are, and their defense is probably worse than the Panthers are too. So I'm saying Amari Cooper is a trade target. Obviously, once again, he's the most expensive out of all of these guys. And so if the price is really high for the other guy who's going to trade him, don't necessarily make a move. But if you can get him on the I wouldn't say cheap, but cheaper than some of these other, high end wide receivers who are kind of more hyped up right now. I think he's absolutely worth going after. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree so too, especially if I think it's very realistic that doesn't have a great statistical game against Tampa too. So maybe,
Yep.
if you can't, maybe I would say initiate talks if if with whoever has him, if you're trying to get, if you do need to get him, do want to get him
Yep.
now, and then especially if he has a, let's say, once again, a poor statistical game against Tampa, you could probably maybe get him on the low. I think, yeah. I mean, I'm with John. It's up maybe a passing offense. He's still one of the better receivers. He may not be top 10 exactly, but he's a top 10. He's in that conversation. And yeah, I mean, I didn't know that stat about him being the second best fantasy receiver. So that does say a lot. And yeah, I'm with you. I definitely think Dallas could have at least two, but probably wouldn't shock me if they had all three, top 25, top 30. The receivers in the top 25 or top 30 because tight end too, it's Blake Jarwin, or is it Dalton, regardless
Yeah,
of who it is,
it's
it's
one of the
no one
two.
they're not going to rely on a lot. And I know that Zeke's been drafted high and we all expect a lot of Zeke, but there's still uncertainty with exactly which Zeke we'll get, if we're going to get top 3 running back Zeke or more of the ones you've seen the past year. So but yeah, regardless, Dallas is going to have a poor defense, so they're going to be passing the ball a lot. So I'm with you. If you can, as long as you're not giving away like Stephon Diggs, DK
Right.
Metcalf.
Right.
But heck, like in my situation, if I could offer like in my redraft league, like I might offer Chase Claypool because as much as I love Chase Claypool, like we mentioned with Pittsburgh, different ideology, probably not enough mouths to feed, not enough opportunity. I know he has maybe a higher ceiling, but definitely a lower floor than Amari Cooper. With Amari, at least I think you'll have like at least a higher floor where he's going to get you at least like 5, 6 catches and at least 60, 70 yards at least. And that's not
Right.
including, maybe a touchdown or even more yards thrown in with that. So yeah, I'm with you. That's a great buy low target, at least
Yeah,
right now.
and I can't stress this enough. A bad defense with a good offense is fantasy gold. That is what you want when it comes to a passing offense. And if anyone is worried about Zeke potentially taking away from his value, in those weeks where Amari Cooper was the second overall receiver in fantasy, Zeke was the third overall running back in fantasy. So I wouldn't be concerned at all about Zeke potentially taking away any value from any of these wide receivers because they showed they still had value with Zeke doing really well while Dak was healthy. And the final option is a guy who is surprising, I think, sort of falling under the radar. I don't know about the drafts that you've been in, but it seems like both ESPN and Yahoo that I've seen have really like put him really deep into their rankings, which makes a lot of people sort of ignore him and forget about him. That is Michael Thomas from the Saints. We do know that he is injured and he's going to miss, I think, at least 5 games. Their bye week is week 6, and so maybe week 7 is when he comes back. But I think that early bye week could almost play into his favor because that gives him just another week to rest where you're not at least missing a game that he could play in, as opposed to if his bye week was in like week 14 where he, if he did come back, he'd miss that. But obviously Michael Thomas and the talent that he is, he's a wide receiver one when he is playing. And I think the addition of Jameis Winston could unlock even more ability out of him down the field. But once again, it's just the main concern right now for him is the fact that he's going to miss a certain amount of games. But I think he's a great buy low target because if you're one of those guys who's really comfortable with who your receivers are, I think that you could get a really high ceiling sort of guy for a lot cheaper. And you might be able to trade, if you're really deep at wide receiver, for example, you might be able to trade someone who has Michael Thomas, a guy who he can start right now if he's not as deep as you are.
Yeah. This is coming from someone who had Choppa Mike the past 2 years. So I've felt the high of him 2 years ago, man. He carried me to a finals and I lost against freaking Kenyon Drake because Kenyon Drake had like 4 touchdowns. That still haunts me to this day. Boy, but
Right.
Choppa Mike carried me. And then I also experienced last year, which is a very tough year as a Michael Thomas owner because he only had like 1 good game. And then that's when he got, I don't know if he got, I forgot if he got injured. I think he like re-injured it and basically sat out. But I think, first off, regardless if it's Jameis or Taysom Hill, if he comes back and he is healthy, I think he'll get his targets, he'll get production. So yeah, I'm with you. I mean, if you're especially confident in your team, and I would keep an eye, and you want to you want to make that late season push, or make sure you have an extra option in case it's always good to have an extra receiver or something. Yeah, I keep an eye on whoever has Michael Thomas, because especially if they start struggling, they're 0-3, 1-2, like those are holes that no fantasy owner wants to be in. Especially if you have an IR slot too that you can put them in, and maybe that's where they're putting him. Say, hey, I would approach them, especially once again if you're doing well, grab him, stash him until the playoffs, because like John said, he could easily be, even if he's not the chop on Mike from 2 years ago where he was dropping 25 points a game, which I miss so much. He can still be the 15, 20 point PPR guy where he's, getting eight targets or 8 catches, 70 yards. And especially the Saints, I think they're going to be, and they're going to be behind the 8 ball. I think this is a team that's going to struggle. I'm not entirely confident in their defense. And regardless, it's Sean Payton. He's an offensive mind. He's going to always get Michael Thomas open and get him production. And especially they might want to do that considering if he doesn't get traded before he comes back, they may want to increase his value to trade him this offseason, because it seems like there's still discomfort, or they're still having issues between Michael Thomas and the team, this offseason. So that's what the Saints may just want to boost his value and then unload him the offseason. So I'm with you. I have him in a couple of leagues, and yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that regardless if my team's winning or struggling, getting him was a week 8 or whenever he comes back will be a big boost, regardless of your wide receiver depth.